If you are joining us today, you probably already know the visceral sensory experience of the sport.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, that low, constant hum of the stabilization field just kind of vibrating through the floorboards. You know, the unmistakable sharp crack of an enchanted stick echoing inside that enclosed dome.
Right, the 210 by 95-foot transparent dome. It's iconic.
It is. And, I mean, you know the absolute thrill of watching players launch themselves off the ground, completely defying physics as they navigate the airspace above the turf.
Manaball really is, without a doubt, one of the most mechanically demanding sports ever invented.
Yeah.
I mean, in its entire 340-year history.
Exactly. But when looking through the sources for today's deep dive, I realized we needed to talk about one specific roster that has completely broken the established meta of the game.
Yes, the Crimson Tigers.
The recent season of the Crimson Tigers at Manheim Academy.
Yeah.
And their stat line isn't just impressive, it honestly looks like a mathematical anomaly.
It really does.
They finished the regular season with a 7-0-2 record.
Just
7 wins, 0 regulation losses, 2 overtime losses, 49 goals scored, and only 29 allowed.
incredible.
Okay, let's unpack this, because how does a team dominate that thoroughly in a sport this volatile?
Well, it's a remarkable run, especially when you consider the sheer tactical complexity of the game itself. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, to truly understand how the Tigers pulled off a season like this, you have to look well past the scoreboards.
Past the highlight reels?
Exactly. The secret to their dominance isn't just athletic or even magical superiority. It is psychological.
Which I found so fascinating in the sources.
It changes everything. Our deep dive today is essentially a character study. We're analyzing a roster composed of fiercely individual, brilliant, and honestly deeply guarded teenagers.
Yeah.
And against all conventional logic, they somehow synthesize their own personal anxieties into this unstoppable athletic machine.
I find that angle so compelling.
Yeah.
Because on paper, the system they run,
The architecture of aggression.
right, that's what I've been calling it. The architecture of aggression. It simply should not work. For a bit of context for you listening, we know that the flight band inside the dome is divided into 3 vertical layers.
Yes, you have the upper layer near the roof.
The neutral plane right in the middle.
And the lower layer near the turf.
Right. And players are constantly fighting against managravity, which is that magical stabilization field, actively pulling everyone toward the center of the air.
It's there to prevent catastrophic collisions with the dome walls, yeah.
Exactly. So most teams navigate this chaotic 3D space by relying on a really balanced, structured formation.
Yeah.
But the Tigers,
They throw balance entirely out the window.
totally out the window. They run a highly aggressive 3-2-1 formation. 3 centers, 2 strikers, and 1 single defender.
It is a phenomenal tactical gamble. I mean, you have teams in this league like the Azure Bears who rely entirely on strict structure, positional awareness, controlling the neutral plane.
Yeah, very true.
Right. And the Tigers reject that premise entirely. Their whole identity revolves around dictating tempo.
By constantly rotating their 3 setters.
Exactly. Across all 3 vertical layers simultaneously. They don't just possess the puck, they swarm it. They turn the entire volume of the dome into a hyperfluid battlefield.
Which forces opposing defenses to perpetually react rather than execute their own game plans.
You're always on your back foot against them.
Which brings us perfectly to their signature play. Reading the playbook description of this move in the sources is genuinely terrifying.
Ah, the Crimson Collapse.
The Crimson Collapse. The Tigers will have all 3 centers push into the offensive zone at the exact same time across the neutral and lower layers.
While their 2 strikers dive bomb straight down from the upper layer.
Yes, it's a synchronized 5-player offensive barrage. It completely overwhelms the opponent, and it perfectly mirrors the team's culture.
Oh,
Even their practice field reflects this combative identity. The sources describe it as this high-energy, fire-driven stone terrace with red banners snapping in the wind.
impact sparks literally flying off the grass during scrimmages.
That sounds intense.
That environment is a crucible. And to run a system that aggressive, that hyper-focus on offense, you need a very specific type of engine.
You need players who don't just tolerate chaos, but actually thrive in it.
Which is why we need to examine the playmakers first. The 3 centers who orchestrate the Crimson Collapse are arguably the most fascinating psychological subjects on the team.
The core engine of the Tigers. And we absolutely have to start with Liz Hadbucks,
The Queen Bee.
the undisputed top point scorer on the team. racking up 25 points this season with 11 goals and 14 assists.
She is a morphomancy specialist.
Instantly recognizable by her bright pink hair. But it's how she plays that is so striking. Morphomancy allows the player to alter their physical form, right?
Right, and Liz uses it to constantly shift her physical density on the fly.
She makes herself heavy to blast through defenders like a battering ram, then instantly lightens up to dart into the upper airspace.
It's incredibly demanding magic.
Take Game 16 against the Verdant Deer. It was a 10-2 absolute demolition.
She was unreal that game.
Liz put up an 8-point game, 3 goals, 5 assists. She doesn't just play the game. She physically reorganizes the reality of the field around herself.
She certainly does. But this raises an important question. What fuels that level of relentless physical output?
Right.
Psychologically, Liz's uncontained ambition is actually driven by a profound terror of invisibility.
Which makes sense, given her background.
Exactly. As the heiress to the massive Hadbucks coffee empire, she lives with this underlying fear that without constant, undeniable performance...
Not the applause and the glamour.
Right, she would fade into irrelevance as just another trust fund kid. She desperately needs to prove that she is the architect of her own legacy, not merely a product of it.
So on the field, she cannot allow herself to stop performing.
To her, stopping feels identical to disappearing.
That is such a heavy burden to carry into a high-contact sport. And what's fascinating is how that perfectly contrasts with a second center in their rotation, Sydney Distancic.
Sydney is brilliant.
Sydney put up 24 points, and a staggering 19 of those were assists. She's an ecologic specialist.
The polymath.
While Liz is physically battering through the defense, Sydney is manipulating the air currents and environmental variables inside the dome to create completely frictionless passing lanes.
She's often described as the cool girl runner.
Because she makes these incredibly complex atmospheric manipulations look totally effortless.
But the effortless aura is highly constructed.
Is it?
Oh, definitely. Sydney's private exhaustion comes from the reality that she is perpetually almost the best. She is always adjacent to greatness.
Always the primary assist, rarely the goal scorer.
Exactly. Her driving fear is that her visibility is entirely conditional. That if she ever stops striving, if she ever drops that standard of perfection, she'll lose her place entirely. She channels that deep, contained frustration into a disciplined, relentless fire on the field. She's the ultimate playmaker because she's constantly scanning the dome, constantly evaluating the variables.
Constantly proving through her assists that she deserves to be seen.
Spot on.
So you have Liz fearing invisibility, Sydney fearing conditional worth, and then you inject the third center into the mix, Sarah Vanderbilt.
The wild card.
Sarah brought in 13 assists this season using the Eldritch Arts. She is the team's goth girl, completely swathed in black lace armor.
Tapping into Eldritch magic means she's channeling chaotic, unrefined energies.
And she brings this incredibly gritty, unpredictable two-way play to the center rotation.
Sarah is what makes the engine work, really. If Liz is seeking the crowd's applause and Sydney is seeking conditional validation from her peers, Sarah is seeking absolute authorship over herself.
How so?
Well, her hostility, the black lace armor, her whole detachment, it's all a highly tuned defense mechanism. She genuinely believes that kindness is a trap.
That vulnerability only invites others to control you.
Precisely. By pushing people away, she protects herself. But on the Manaball field, that defiance translates into raw, unpolished aggression.
She refuses to be shaped or anticipated by any opposing defense,
making her chaotic, eldritch playstyle almost impossible to scout or predict.
Imagine being an opposing defense and having to read those 3 distinct playstyles, all rotating at high speed.
It's a nightmare.
But all of that set up in the neutral plane doesn't matter if you don't have players who can actually finish the job.
Right. The finishers.
Let's look at the airspace above them, the strikers. This is where the chaos of the centers turns into absolute precision. First up is Autumn Fallon, famously known as the Rogue.
Led the team in scoring.
16 goals. She has this striking auburn crimson hair and is an illusion magic specialist. In a sport moving this fast, illusion magic is devastating.
It really is. She's subtly bending light, projecting false silhouettes so the goalie reacts a fraction of a second too late.
Her signature move is the downward spike shot from the upper layer.
Oh, that move is beautiful to watch.
In Game 1 against the Bears, she caught a massive lift pass from Sydney and executed this blinding, diving goal from the top of the dome. It completely set the tone for the entire season.
Autumn's playstyle is a masterclass in calculated distance. Much like Sarah, Autumn's greatest internal fear is exposure.
She views intimacy as a risk.
A profound risk, yes, and vulnerability as a direct threat to her safety. But while Sarah uses open hostility as her armor, Autumn uses mystique and misdirection.
She wants to remain uncontainable and ungovernable.
Exactly. For Autumn, controlling her illusion, magic isn't about dominating the opponent. It's about maintaining her own total autonomy.
So when she's operating high up in the open airspace of the upper layer, out of reach of the physical scrums below, she achieves exactly that.
She is completely free, and as a result, totally lethal.
And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Because playing right alongside this elusive, autonomous rogue is Ty Clyde.
The all-star.
Ty put up a perfectly balanced stat line of 10 goals and 10 assists. He is an electromancy user, meaning he is literally firing kinetic lightning off his stick.
And utilizing magnetic repulsion to control the puck.
He is built incredibly powerfully. If you look at him, he looks like a terrifying enforcer who is just going to check you right into the reinforced glass.
But appearances can be deeply deceiving, and that brings us to Ty's burden of projection.
Right.
Because of his physical size and the inherently aggressive nature of electromancy, everyone assumes he's just a blunt force instrument.
But he's not.
Not at all. In reality, Ty is the most deeply thoughtful, grounded, and protective player on the roster. He consistently chooses discipline over display.
He sees the high voltage, chaotic, and sometimes selfish ambitions of the players around him, and he actively chooses to anchor them.
He provides this quiet, controlled fire. He doesn't need the spotlight. He simply needs to be the reliable foundation that allows the others to fly.
It's almost like Ty is literally the emotional grounding wire for all the raw anxiety and ambition flying around the offensive zone.
That's a great way to put it.
But we cannot talk about grounding the team without looking at the real stress test of this roster. The defense.
Yes.
Going back to their tactical layout, a 3-2-1 system means they only field one true defender in front of their guardian.
Which is an almost suicidal amount of defensive exposure in a game this fast.
It borders on the reckless.
It effectively abandons the defensive zone in favor of overwhelming offensive pressure. And that places a truly unimaginable psychological and physical weight on exactly two players.
Yeah. Let's look at that lone defender, Chad Griffith.
Appropriately nicknamed the Bully.
Chad is a morphomancy user like Liz, but instead of using it for speed, he uses it to bulk up his armor and mass. He racked up a massive 38 hits and 10 penalty minutes this season.
He's a bruiser.
But he also has moments of pure clutch play. In Game 12 against the Golden Eagles, which turned into a wild 6-5 shootout, Chad actually crashed the net all the way from the defensive line and scored the game-winning rebound.
Chad represents perhaps the most tragic psychological profile in the academy.
Tell me about that.
His constant bullying, his volume, his desperate need to physically dominate his opponents, all of it is a facade. It's hiding a profound terror of silence and irrelevance.
His entire sense of self-worth is intrinsically tied to his physical dominance.
Exactly. Every minor injury, every new rookie who might be slightly faster is a direct threat to his fragile ego.
So he essentially operates as a single-use weapon on the field.
Acting out of deep insecurity. He bullies because he needs opponents to fear him, secretly believing that no one actually respects him.
That adds such a heavy layer of melancholy to those 38 hits. He's literally fighting for his right to exist on the field.
He is.
And standing right behind him, carrying the ultimate weight of the world, is Devin Grazzo.
The Guardian.
Devin's stats are mind-blowing. He faced 230 shots this season. He made 201 saves.
That is an 87.39% save percentage.
And remember, he is doing this in a system that constantly leaves him out to dry against odd-man rushes. He uses demonology, summoning abyssal wards and containment barriers to block shots.
Devin is a remarkable talent. He cultivated this bad boy persona.
Glacial blue eyes, famously cold demeanor, rumors following him everywhere.
Right. But if we unpack that demonology and that persona, his coldness is just another form of extreme containment.
He firmly believes that closeness is a liability.
And that letting anyone in will inevitably end in pain and disappointment. Yet, look at his role on the team. He is the ultimate fail-safe safety net.
He saves his teammates from the consequences of their own reckless offensive system time and time again.
He stands completely isolated in the crease, acting as the impenetrable armor for his team, while quietly longing for someone to see past the armor he wears himself.
So what does this all mean? We have a roster full of deeply talented players who are terrified of fading away, terrified of vulnerability, terrified of irrelevance.
It's a powder keg.
How does this volatile psychological melting pot actually perform when it hits the crucible of a grueling regular season? To see it in action, we have to look at how their psychology dictated their performance in three defining matchups.
The best way to understand the Tiger system is to watch how it clashes with contrasting styles.
Let's start with their games against the Golden Eagles.
This was a pure, unadulterated matchup of chaos versus chaos.
The Eagles are really the only team in the league that has the raw speed to match the Tigers, and we saw that immediately in Game 6,
The Eagles actually beat the Tigers at their own high-speed transition game.
handing them a very tight 5-4 overtime loss.
When you have two incredibly fast, highly aggressive teams colliding, the victor is usually the team that makes the fewest unforced errors. In Game 6, the Eagles expertly capitalized on the Tigers' over-aggression.
But what is truly revealing is how the Tigers adapted by Game 18.
Their season finale against those same Eagles.
It was another chaotic back-and-forth shootout, deadlocked at 4-4 in the third period.
And in that moment of absolute chaos, it was Sarah Vanderbilt who stepped up.
The player who refuses to be controlled.
The player who demands absolute authorship found the space, finished a brilliant passing sequence, and clinched a thrilling 6-4 victory.
When the game devolved into pure chaos, the Tigers' individual brilliance simply outwilled the opponent.
They did.
Then you have the exact opposite scenario, the Tigers taking on the verdant deer. This was aggression versus patience.
The Deer are notorious for being a heavy, defensive, counterattacking team that wants to slow the game down.
And in Game 16, the Tigers absolutely dismantled them 10-2. That was the game where Liz Hadbucks put up those 8 points.
Reading the play-by-play, Liz would take the puck in the lower layer, shift her mass to absorb the physical checks from the Deer's structured defense,
And just blast through their passing lanes before they could even set up their counterattack.
Game 16 was a perfect example of the Tigers forcing their reality onto the opponent. Liz, fueled by her desperate need to be the architect of the field, just shattered the Deer structure through sheer force of will.
But contrast that blowout with Game 10 against the same team.
In Game 10, the Deer successfully managed to drag the pace down to a grinding physical crawl.
They forced the Tigers to play a low-scoring, highly patient game.
That slow pace is deeply counter to the Tigers' psychological need for high-tempo validation. The game went to sudden death overtime, tied at 2.
And once again, when they are pushed to the brink, their stars refuse to be denied. Liz Hadbucks finds a microscopic soft spot in that grinding defense
Catches a frictionless, perfectly manipulated pass from Sydney Distancic.
and ends the game 3-2. Even when they are deeply frustrated, their need to win overrides the tactical disadvantage.
Which brings us finally to their historic rivalry. The Crimson Tigers versus the Azure Bears.
This matchup is the ultimate clash of tempo versus structure.
The Bears play an incredibly disciplined positional game designed to choke out the neutral plane.
In Game 7, the Tigers' sheer tempo completely broke the Bears' structure. The Tigers won 6-1.
And that was the game where Devin Grazzo put on an absolute masterclass in goal with a .955 save percentage.
It proved that as long as Devin's containment holds up under pressure, the Tigers' offense is basically untouchable.
But Game 13 proved that they are not invincible
The Bears made a tactical adjustment.
and put in their backup goalie, Maina Minna. And she played the game of her life, making 26 crucial saves,
She completely frustrated the Tigers.
deliberately slowing down their tempo and forcing them into the kind of structured, patient half-court game that they absolutely despise.
The Bears ended up winning that matchup 3-2 in overtime.
Game 13 is the skeleton key to understanding the Tigers' true vulnerability. It proved that the Crimson Tigers are virtually unstoppable unless they are forced out of their emotional comfort zone.
If an opponent can survive the initial onslaught and force them to play a slow, patient, structured game, the Tigers' internal anxieties begin to misfire.
They get desperate to make something happen. They start trying to force impossible passes.
And most importantly, they overcommit.
Exactly.
So why should you, as a listener, care about the intricacies of this specific season? Because the Crimson Tigers are a terrifying masterclass in how individual human anxieties can be weaponized into collective excellence.
We are talking about the fear of irrelevance, the fear of vulnerability, the suffocating weight of expectations.
These players took those deeply personal, incredibly raw emotions and channeled them into a devastatingly effective athletic system.
They do not just win because they are uniquely talented at magic.
They win because they are driven by a relentless, almost desperate psychological need to validate their own existence every single time they step into that dome.
It is a breathtaking synthesis of psychology and sports strategy, but I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, looking toward the future of Manaball itself.
What's that?
The Tigers' official playbook explicitly lists their greatest strategic weakness as overcommitting. In their 3-2-1 system, they push so hard on the attack that they leave themselves perpetually exposed to counterattacks.
Right.
Now, considering that this hyper-aggressive, psychologically red-line system just secured a 7-0-2 record and completely broke the traditional meta of the game, what does the rest of the league do next season?
Do opposing teams have to abandon centuries of balanced, structured strategy just to keep up?
Are we witnessing the permanent death of structured Manaball, soon to be replaced by a league-wide arms race of overwhelming, unsustainable tempo?
Or is this Crimson Tigers roster a once-in-a-generation statistical anomaly?
A system so intrinsically tied to these specific players' traumas that any team who tries to copy it will simply collapse under its own weight, especially when playoff pressure hits. Will they burn out from running a system that offers no room for rest?
That is a fascinating tactical question. Does the whole sport evolve to match their chaos, or is the 3-2-1 a house of cards waiting to fall? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the sources today.
It's been a great discussion.
I highly encourage you to keep exploring the fascinating lore and mechanics of Manheim Academy on your own. There is always more beneath the surface. Catch you next time.